Millionaire humiliates poor 6-year-old girl in public for wearing an old dress until she gives him a coin and his heart breaks. Before we unfold this sorrowful story of isolation and grief, comment your location and subscribe for more emotional journeys. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of Henderson's department store as 6-year-old Emma clutched her grandmother's old coin purse with trembling fingers. Her faded pink dress, carefully mended with mismatched thread and patches that told stories of countless wash cycles, stood out among the designer clothing displays like a dandelion struggling to bloom in a perfectly manicured rose garden. The afternoon shopping rush swirled around her small figure as she gazed up at the mannequins, dressed in beautiful velvet dresses and shiny patent leather shoes. Emma's own scuffed sneakers, held together with duct tape and hope, squeaked softly against the polished floor as she shifted from foot to foot, lost in dreams of someday wearing something so pretty. "Excuse me, little girl," came a sharp voice that cut through the afternoon bustle like a knife through silk. This isn't a playground for vagrant children. Emma looked up to see a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly styled without a strand out of place, his cold blue eyes scanning her threadbare appearance with obvious disgust and barely concealed irritation. At 48, Richard Henderson owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Chicago, and his expression made it crystal clear he found her presence not just unwelcome, but personally offensive to his carefully cultivated image. "I'm sorry, mister," Emma whispered, her small voice barely audible above the department store's classical music that seemed to mock her poverty with its elegant notes. "I was just looking at the pretty dresses for when I get a family and have somewhere special to go." Richard's jaw tightened as other customers began to pause their shopping to stare at the unfolding scene. The last thing he needed was this raggedy child drawing unwanted attention to his flagship store during peak shopping hours. His reputation for exclusivity was what kept the wealthy clientele coming back, and this little waif threatened that carefully maintained atmosphere. "Looking is for customers who can actually afford to buy something," he said coldly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. "Where are your parents? They should be watching you more carefully." Emma's brown eyes filled with tears that she fought valiantly to hold back, but she lifted her chin with surprising dignity for someone so small and vulnerable. "I don't have parents, sir. Miss Sarah from the orphanage brought us here to see the Christmas decorations downtown, but I got lost when I saw the beautiful dresses in the window." The word orphanage hit Richard like a physical blow, stirring memories he'd buried deep beneath decades of success and carefully constructed emotional walls. But his public image mattered more than childhood ghosts that had no place in his adult world. "Well, you need to leave immediately. Now, you're disturbing my customers, and this is a business establishment, not a charity." "But sir," Emma said with heartbreaking hope, reaching into her worn purse with hands that shook slightly. "I have money, see?" She pulled out a single tarnished silver coin that caught the light like a fallen star. "Grandma gave this to me before she went to heaven. Can I buy a family with this? Is it enough?" The question hung in the air like a prayer whispered in an empty cathedral, and for one devastating moment, Richard Henderson's carefully constructed world began to crumble around the edges. The coin in her tiny palm wasn't just currency. It was hope, desperation, innocence, and the kind of faith that adults spend lifetimes trying to recapture, all wrapped into one impossible, heartbreaking wish. Around them, shoppers had stopped their browsing to stare at the scene unfolding in the children's department, their faces showing a mixture of pity and judgment that made Richard's chest tighten with unexpected shame. His throat constricted as suppressed memories flooded back, memories of another 6-year-old, another coin, another desperate wish that had gone unanswered 42 years ago in a different life he'd tried so hard to forget. The orphanage smelled of industrial disinfectant and broken dreams as Richard pushed through the heavy oak doors 2 hours later, his hands shaking slightly, something that hadn't happened since his first $1 million deal 15 years ago. His expensive Italian leather shoes echoed against the worn linoleum floors as he approached the front desk where Sarah Martinez looked up with weary surprise etched across her kind but tired features. "Mr. Henderson? I wasn't expecting you," Sarah said, setting down the stack of paperwork she'd been reviewing. She had been running Mercy Children's Home for 15 years, long enough to recognize the haunted look that sometimes appeared in successful men's eyes when they suddenly remembered their buried humanity and found it lacking. The little girl, Emma. "She was in my store today," Richard's voice cracked like ice under pressure, the words coming out more roughly than he intended. I need to understand what happened to me in there, why seeing her affected me so profoundly." Sarah's expression softened with recognition and something that might have been hope. "Ah, you met our Emma. She has that effect on people, sees right through to the heart of things. Come, let me show you her file and tell you her story." They walked down a hallway lined with children's artwork, colorful crayon drawings of stick-figure families and rainbow houses, past dormitory rooms where lonely voices echoed with the particular sadness that comes from children trying to comfort each other when no adults are available to do the job. Richard's chest tightened with each step, remembering similar halls from his own past, the institutional smell that never quite left your memory, no matter how successful you became. "Emma came to us 3 years ago," Sarah explained, pulling out a thin manila folder from a filing cabinet that held too many similar stories. "Found wandering downtown after her grandmother died of cancer. No other family members could be located. She's been waiting for adoption ever since, though she's never stopped believing it will happen." Richard stared at the photograph clipped to the file, the same trusting brown eyes that had shattered his composure earlier. The same hopeful smile that seemed to shine despite circumstances that should have crushed any child's spirit. "What about that coin? She said she could buy a family with it." Sarah smiled sadly, an expression she'd perfected over years of watching children cling to impossible dreams. "Her grandmother's last gift, a 1923 silver dollar that's been in their family for generations. Emma believes it's magic, that it will help her find a family someday. We've tried explaining that money doesn't work that way, but hope is sometimes all these children have to hold on to. But hope is all she has." Richard finished, his voice barely above a whisper, as the truth of those words settled into his bones like cold rain. "Exactly," Sarah said, studying his face carefully with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen many adults grapple with their consciences. "Mr. Henderson, what really brought you here? In 15 years of running this place, I've never seen you show any interest in our children or our programs." Richard closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 4 decades of buried pain pressing against his chest like a physical force. "Because 42 years ago, I was Emma, same age, same hope, same impossible wish that someone somewhere might want a damaged little boy." "What happened to that little boy?" Sarah asked gently, her voice carrying the kind of compassion that came from years of healing broken children. "He grew up angry and empty, rich but hollow inside. He built walls so high and so thick that love couldn't find its way in, and he convinced himself that was protection rather than prison." Richard's voice grew stronger, more determined, until today, when a 6-year-old girl with a silver coin reminded him what it felt like to believe in miracles. Sarah reached across her desk and squeezed Richard's hand with surprising warmth. "So what happens now? What are you going to do with this awakening?" Richard straightened his shoulders, feeling a decision crystallize in his mind, like morning frost forming on a window. "Now, I stop running from who I used to be and start becoming who I'm meant to be." The custody paperwork spread across Richard's mahogany desk like a roadmap to redemption, each form representing another step away from the cold, empty life he'd built and toward something he'd never dared to imagine possible. His lawyer, Patricia Wells, sat across from him, with barely concealed shock etched on her 60-year-old features, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she reviewed documents she'd never expected to prepare. "Richard, I have to ask," And please don't take this the wrong way, but are you absolutely certain about this decision? Single adoption at 48, no previous experience with children, no romantic partner to help share the responsibilities. Patricia adjusted her glasses, studying her oldest and most successful client with genuine concern. This isn't like acquiring a company. Children require emotional investment that can't be delegated to assistants. I've never been more certain of anything in my entire life, Richard replied, signing his name with decisive strokes that seemed to carve his commitment into the very paper. Emma needs a family, Patricia, and I need to remember what it means to be human instead of just successful. Patricia leaned back in her leather chair, her expression shifting from professional skepticism to personal curiosity. The home studies will be extensive and invasive. They'll investigate every aspect of your life: finances, background, psychological evaluation, interviews with colleagues and employees. Are you truly prepared for that level of scrutiny? Some very private aspects of your past will need to be disclosed. Richard set down his pen and met her gaze steadily, something settling in his chest, like a weight he'd been carrying finally finding its proper place. Patricia, you've known me for 20 years. You've known. You know what I came from, where I started. Maybe it's time I stopped running from that story and started using it for something good. Tell me about your childhood, Richard. All of it. I need to understand what's driving this sudden decision, because the adoption agency certainly will, and they'll be far less gentle in their questioning than I am. The silence stretched between them like a bridge Richard had never allowed himself to cross before. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant with memory, but steady with newfound purpose. Riverside Children's Home, 1983 to 1990. 7 years of waiting for a family that never came, of watching other kids get chosen, while I stood there hoping someone would see past the anger to the scared little boy underneath. Patricia's expression softened as she saw her client in an entirely new light. How did you survive it? How did you become the man you are today? I made a promise to that scared, angry little boy that I'd never be vulnerable again. I'd be so successful, so powerful, so wealthy that nobody could ever hurt me or reject me again. Richard's laugh held no humor, only the bitter wisdom of hard-won experience. I kept that promise, Patricia, built an empire, accumulated more money than 10 generations could spend. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that the point wasn't just to survive, it was to live, to connect, to matter to someone. And Emma reminds you of yourself? Emma reminds me of who I could have been if someone had seen past the anger to the hope underneath. She reminds me that courage isn't about having no fear. It's about believing in tomorrow despite everything that went wrong yesterday. Richard stood and walked to his office window, gazing down at the city he'd conquered but never truly inhabited. Yesterday, she asked if she could buy a family with a single coin. Do you know what I wanted to tell her, Patricia? What? That families can't be bought with money. They have to be built with love, patience, and daily choices to show up for each other. One day at a time, one moment at a time. And maybe I'm finally ready to start building something that matters more than my bank account. Patricia gathered the papers, her professional demeanor giving way to genuine warmth and what might have been pride. The process will take months, Richard. Home visits, interviews, background checks, parenting classes. Are you prepared for Emma to see you as more than just the mean man from the department store? Are you ready to become someone's entire world? Richard turned from the window, and for the first time in decades, Patricia saw vulnerability and hope coexisting in his eyes. I'm prepared to try, Patricia. I'm prepared to fail, to learn, to grow, and to love in ways I never thought possible. That little girl taught me something yesterday, that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be. The children's art therapy room at Mercy Home buzzed with the quiet concentration of small hands creating big dreams as Emma carefully colored within the lines of her drawing, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. Crayons scattered across the small table like fallen rainbows, while she worked on what had become her signature subject over the past 3 years. A house with 2 stick figures standing in front of it. Always the same hopeful scene rendered in different color combinations. Dr. Jennifer Ross, the home's child psychologist, watched the 6-year-old work with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent 15 years learning to read the hidden messages in children's artwork. She settled into a child-sized chair beside Emma, her clipboard balanced on her knees, ready to document another session in their ongoing therapeutic relationship. "Tell me about your picture today, Emma," Dr. Ross said gently, her voice carrying the warm interest that had helped dozens of children process their trauma and loss over the years. Emma held up her crayon drawing proudly, her face lighting up with the pure joy that seemed to radiate from her despite everything she'd lost. "This is my someday house, Dr. Ross. See? There's me and my daddy standing in front." She pointed to the larger stick figure with careful precision. "He's very tall and has kind eyes, just like my grandma said he would. And look," she showed the silver coin she'd taped to the corner of the paper with transparent tape. "Grandma's magic coin is keeping the picture safe until it comes true." Dr. Ross studied the drawing with professional interest, noting the consistent elements that appeared in every single piece Emma created. In the 3 years the child had been at the home, every picture featured the same 2 components: a house that looked like home should feel, and a father figure. Never a mother, never siblings, always just Emma and a daddy. "What makes you so sure you'll have a daddy, sweetheart? Have you thought about maybe having a mommy instead?" Emma's face grew serious beyond her years, taking on that peculiar gravity that children develop when they've had to think about adult concepts too early. "Because Grandma told me before she went to heaven, and Grandma never lied to me ever. She said, 'Emma, honey, somewhere out there is a daddy who needs you just as much as you need him. He's probably sad and lonely, just like you are, and the coin will help you find each other when the time is exactly right.' Do you remember your grandma well?" "It's okay if some memories are fuzzy. You were very young when she passed." "Oh, yes." Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning, her entire demeanor transforming with the joy of beloved memories. She smelled like lavender soap and vanilla extract, and she made the best chocolate chip cookies in the whole world. She would read to me every single night before bed, even when she got really sick, and her hands shook so much she could barely hold the book. She never missed story time, not once. Dr. Ross made notes on her clipboard, recognizing the healthy attachment patterns that would serve Emma well in future relationships. The child's connection to her deceased grandmother provided crucial emotional stability in an otherwise chaotic young life. "What kinds of stories did she read to you? Do you have favorite memories?" "Fairy tales, mostly, the old ones with princesses and magic and happy endings. But my very favorite was about the little princess who lost everything, her castle, her fancy dresses, even her family, but never stopped believing that good things were coming. Grandma said I was just like that princess, that I had the same brave heart." Emma carefully selected a yellow crayon for the sun in her picture, considering her color choice with the seriousness of a master artist. "Dr. Ross, do you think my daddy is out there looking for me too? Do you think he's sad like I get sometimes?" The question pierced straight through Dr. Ross's professional composure, hitting her in the place where her own parental instincts lived. "I think, Emma, that love has a mysterious way of finding us exactly when we need it most, often in ways we never expected." Emma nodded solemnly, as if this confirmed something she'd always suspected. "That's exactly what I think too. Maybe that's why the mean man at the store looked so sad when I showed him my coin yesterday. Maybe he's somebody's little boy who's still waiting for his daddy too, you know?" Dr. Ross paused her note-taking, struck by the child's intuitive wisdom that seemed to see straight through to the heart of human nature. "What makes you think that, sweetheart?" His eyes looked just like mine do, in the bathroom mirror sometimes when I think nobody's watching. All lonely and hoping for something better, but trying to pretend they're not. Emma added careful green grass to the bottom of her drawing, each stroke deliberate and meaningful. "I hope he finds his daddy soon, Dr. Ross. Everyone deserves to belong somewhere, even mean grown-ups who forgot how to be nice." At that moment, Sarah Martinez appeared in the doorway, with an expression of barely contained excitement, her eyes bright with the kind of news that could change everything. "Emma, sweetie, can you come with me for a minute? There's someone very special here who wants to meet you." Emma looked up with sudden hope, blazing in her brown eyes like stars coming out at dusk. "Is it him, Dr. Ross? Is it my daddy?" The meeting room at Mercy Children's Home felt smaller than usual, as Richard sat rigidly in an adult-sized chair that seemed comically oversized among the colorful children's furniture surrounding him. His expensive charcoal suit looked out of place against the cheerful yellow walls, decorated with finger paintings and construction paper flowers, and his palms were sweating. Something that hadn't happened since his first board presentation to hostile investors 25 years ago. The room smelled like crayons and hope, two scents that transported Richard instantly back to his own childhood in ways that made his chest tighten with long-buried emotions. He'd changed clothes 3 times that morning, uncertain what one wore to potentially meet their future daughter, settling finally on his most approachable suit and a tie that Emma might find cheerful. Sarah Martinez stood by the door, her hand resting on the handle while she offered him one final moment to collect himself. "Remember, Mr. Henderson, this is just a meet and greet. No pressure on either of you, no expectations or commitments. Emma doesn't know about your interest in adoption yet. We thought it best to see how you two interact naturally first." Richard nodded, his throat suddenly dry despite the glass of water Sarah had thoughtfully provided. "I understand completely. I need her to see that I'm not the monster from the department store yesterday. I need her to know that I'm sorry, that I want to do better." The door opened with a soft creak, and Emma appeared like sunlight breaking through clouds, her small hand tucked safely in Sarah's larger one. She wore the same faded pink dress from yesterday, but someone had tied her dark hair back with a bright yellow ribbon that made her brown eyes seem even larger and more expressive. When she saw Richard, her steps faltered for just a moment before curiosity overcame caution. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah encouraged with the gentle voice she'd perfected over years of helping children navigate difficult emotions. "Mr. Henderson wanted to come here today to apologize for yesterday. He realizes he wasn't very kind to you, and he feels bad about that." Emma studied Richard's face with the penetrating intensity that only children possess, as if she could see straight through his expensive clothes and careful grooming to the wounded soul underneath. Her grandmother had taught her to look for kindness in people's eyes, and she was conducting that assessment now with the seriousness of a judge evaluating evidence. Slowly, deliberately, she approached his chair, her grandmother's precious coin clutched tightly in her small fist, like a talisman against disappointment. Each step seemed to take forever, the distance between them measured not just in feet, but in the vast gulf between his world of privilege and her world of hope deferred. "Are you still sad?" she asked, when she finally stood directly in front of him, her voice soft but clear, carrying a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone who'd experienced such loss. The question caught Richard completely off guard, hitting him with the force of unexpected truth. "Sad? Yesterday, when I showed you my coin, you looked like you were going to cry, but were trying really hard not to. My grandma always told me that when grown-ups are mean to children, it's usually because something inside them hurts so much they don't know how to be nice anymore." Richard felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling like sandcastles before an incoming tide. Everything he'd built to protect himself seemed suddenly fragile and unnecessary in the face of this child's clear-eyed compassion. He knelt down to Emma's eye level, bringing himself into her world rather than forcing her to reach up into his. "Your grandma was very, very wise, Emma. Yes, I was sad yesterday. I've been sad for a very long time, so long I'd forgotten what it felt like not to be sad." Emma tilted her head, considering this admission with the gravity of someone much older. "What makes you so sad? Did you lose someone important too?" "The same thing that makes you sad, I think. I never had a real family either. Nobody ever wanted me when I was little, just like nobody has wanted you yet." Emma's eyes widened with sudden understanding, and something shifted in her expression. a recognition of kindred spirits finding each other across the years. "You're an orphan too? You lived in a place like this?" "I was, Emma. A long time ago, I was a little boy exactly like you, hoping and wishing and praying that someone would choose me, that someone would see something in me worth loving." Without warning, without hesitation, Emma stepped forward and placed her small, warm hand on Richard's cheek with a tenderness that nearly shattered him completely. The gesture was so pure, so instinctively nurturing, that it reached places in his heart he'd thought were dead and buried. "Did you have a magic coin like mine to help you find your family?" Richard's voice came out as barely more than a whisper, thick with 40 years of suppressed emotion. "I had a lucky penny my mother gave me before she died. I made the exact same wish you did, Emma." Emma's face brightened with sudden inspiration, as if puzzle pieces were clicking together in her mind. "Maybe that's why we met. Maybe your penny and my coin were friends up in heaven with Grandma, and they planned this whole thing." She held out her silver dollar, its surface worn smooth from decades of hopeful touches and desperate prayers. "Would you like to hold it? Grandma said it brings together people who are supposed to be family." With hands that trembled like leaves in an autumn wind, Richard accepted the coin that meant everything to this precious child. The metal felt warm against his palm, as if it truly held magic within its tarnished surface, as if all the love and hope Emma had poured into it over the years was now flowing into him. "Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion he could no longer contain, "what would you say if I told you I'd like us to be a family? What if I want to be your daddy?" 3 months later, the transformation of Richard Henderson's penthouse apartment reflected the complete revolution that had taken place in his heart and soul. Gone were the cold marble surfaces that had once showcased his wealth but offered no warmth, replaced by soft area rugs in cheerful colors that invited bare feet and impromptu dance sessions. The sterile modern furniture had been exchanged for a cozy sectional sofa covered in colorful throw pillows and the occasional stuffed animal, with a coffee table that bore the happy scars of coloring book sessions and craft projects. Emma's artwork decorated not just the refrigerator, but every available wall space, a gallery of stick figures and rainbow houses that told the story of a little girl's dreams finally coming true. Her small pink bedroom had become the brightest, most joyful spot in the entire apartment, filled with books and toys and the kind of organized chaos that only a well-loved child's room can achieve. The morning sun streamed through windows that no longer seemed cold and imposing, but welcoming, casting warm light across the breakfast bar where Emma sat swinging her legs and offering enthusiastic but questionable cooking advice to her father, who stood at the stove, attempting to master the complex art of pancake flipping. "Daddy, I think that one looks like a dinosaur," Emma giggled, pointing at Richard's latest lopsided pancake attempt with the kind of pure delight that had become the soundtrack of their mornings together. "A really, really silly dinosaur with a big belly." The word "daddy" still sent warmth flooding through Richard's chest every single time she said it, a miracle that hadn't dimmed even after 3 months of hearing it daily. The adoption had been finalized just last week, making Emma officially Emma Henderson, a name she practiced writing with elaborate flourishes and hearts dotting the I's, often followed by age 6, daughter of Richard Henderson, the best daddy in the whole world. "A dinosaur, huh?" Richard grinned, sliding the admittedly dinosaur-shaped pancake onto her plate with a flourish that would have made professional chefs weep. "Well then, we'll call this particular specimen a Richardsaurus rex, the rarest and most magnificent pancake-making dinosaur in all of Chicago." Emma dissolved into the kind of delighted laughter that made Richard understand why people wrote songs about joy, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep in her soul where happiness lived. "Daddy, that's not a real dinosaur name. You're being silly." "Just sure it is," Richard protested with mock seriousness, puffing out his chest in exaggerated pride. "It's a very rare species of dinosaur that can only make pancakes shaped like other dinosaurs and give the world's most amazing hugs. I happen to be the last known specimen in captivity. As if to test this theory, Emma launched herself off the bar stool and wrapped her arms around Richard's waist with the fierce intensity of someone who'd learned not to take hugs for granted. I love you so much, Daddy. Thank you for choosing me with your heart instead of making me buy you with my coin. Richard set down his spatula and knelt to Emma's level, a daily ritual that kept him grounded in what truly mattered in life. This moment, this connection, this love that had transformed them both. It was worth more than all his business successes combined. Emma, sweetheart, I need you to understand something very important, and I want you to remember it always. Emma nodded seriously, her brown eyes wide with the kind of attention that children reserve for the most crucial conversations. I didn't choose you, baby girl. You chose me. That day in the store, when you showed me your coin and asked if you could buy a family, you saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You saw past the mean, angry man I'd become to the scared little boy who was still hiding inside, still hoping someone would love him. Emma reached up and touched his face with her small hand, a gesture that had become her signature way of offering comfort. But Daddy, Grandma always said the magic wasn't really in the coin. She said the magic was in believing that love would find a way, even when everything seemed impossible. Richard felt tears prick his eyes as he pulled his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and the indefinable sweetness that seemed to cling to children who were truly, completely loved. Your grandma was absolutely right, Emma. The coin didn't bring us together, love did, and faith. And the incredible courage of a little girl who never stopped hoping, even when hope seemed foolish. Emma pulled back and studied his face with the concern of someone who'd appointed herself guardian of his happiness. Are you crying because you're sad again? Did I say something wrong? No, baby girl. I'm crying because I'm happy. Because for the first time in 48 years, I know exactly where I belong and who I'm meant to be. Richard's voice was thick with emotion, but his smile was radiant with certainty. I belong with you, Emma. I'm meant to be your daddy. Emma beamed and kissed his forehead with the solemnity of someone bestowing a great honor. With me forever and always. Forever and always, Richard confirmed, the words feeling like a sacred vow. Through pancakes that looked like dinosaurs, through scraped knees and bad dreams, through growing up and all the adventures waiting for us. As they sat down to breakfast together, the morning light catching Emma's silver coin, where it sat in its place of honor on their mantelpiece, Richard reflected on the miracle of transformation that love could work in human hearts. The coin was no longer a desperate wish, but a symbol of dreams, fulfilled hope rewarded, and two souls who had found their way home to each other. But their story was just beginning, and the greatest tests of their new family bond were yet to come. 6 months into their new life together, the first real storm clouds appeared on what had seemed like an endlessly sunny horizon. Emma sat hunched over her homework at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her cheeks as she struggled with a math worksheet that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics, for all the sense it made to her 6-year-old mind. I'm stupid, Daddy, she whispered, her voice breaking with the kind of devastation that only comes from a child's first real encounter with academic failure. Mrs. Peterson says I'm behind all the other kids because I lived in the orphanage too long. Richard felt his blood turn to ice as he knelt beside her chair, his protective instincts roaring to life like a sleeping dragon suddenly awakened. Emma, sweetheart, you are absolutely not stupid. You're one of the smartest, most creative children I've ever known. But Emma shook her head violently, crumpling up her worksheet in frustration. No, I'm not. Sarah Williams can already read chapter books, and Tommy Chen knows all his multiplication tables, and I can't even remember which number comes after 7 sometimes. The pain in her voice cut through Richard's heart like a blade. He'd been so focused on providing emotional stability and love that he'd overlooked the academic gaps that 3 years of institutional care had created. Emma had missed crucial developmental milestones while grieving her grandmother and adjusting to orphanage life. Mrs. Peterson said maybe I have learning problems. Emma continued, her words tumbling out between sobs. She said some children from difficult backgrounds never catch up to normal kids. What if I'm broken, Daddy? What if that's why nobody wanted me before you? Richard gathered his daughter into his arms, feeling her small body shake with the force of her tears. The teacher's words, difficult backgrounds, echoed in his mind with the sharp sting of old prejudices he'd hoped Emma would never face. But the world, it seemed, wasn't finished testing their bond. Emma Rose Henderson, he said firmly, using her full name to capture her complete attention. You listen to me very carefully. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not anything less than perfect exactly as you are. He pulled back to look into her tear-stained face, his own eyes blazing with fierce determination. Some people learn to read at 4, others at 8. Some people are naturally good at math, others at art or music or understanding how people feel. Do you know what makes someone truly smart, baby girl? Emma sniffled and shook her head. Kindness, courage, the ability to see good in people when they can't see it in themselves. And you, my beautiful daughter, have more of those qualities than anyone I've ever met. Richard wiped her tears with gentle thumbs. We're going to get you extra help with reading and math, and I'm going to have a very serious conversation with Mrs. Peterson about appropriate ways to discuss student. But what if I really can't learn like other kids? Emma whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Richard's smile was warm with absolute certainty. Then we'll find the way that works for you, because giving up on each other is not what this family does. We figure it out together, no matter how long it takes. Emma's arms tightened around his neck, like she was anchoring herself to his promise. Forever and always, Richard confirmed, already mentally composing the phone call he would make to Emma's teacher first thing in the morning. Mrs. Peterson was about to learn that Emma Henderson had a father who would move mountains to protect his daughter's spirit. But as he held Emma close, Richard couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of the challenges they would face as a family forged from loss and hope. The parent-teacher conference took place in Mrs. Peterson's classroom 3 days later, and Richard arrived armed with research, determination, and barely controlled fury. The 60-year-old teacher sat behind her desk like a fortress, her steel-grey hair pulled into a severe bun that matched her disapproving expression perfectly. "Mr. Henderson, I appreciate you coming in," Mrs. Peterson began, her voice carrying the condescending tone of someone who'd clearly decided that wealthy single fathers were inherently unfit to understand educational matters. As I mentioned to Emma, children from institutional backgrounds often struggle to integrate into normal academic environment. Richard's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level and professional. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm concerned about the language you're using with my daughter. Terms like normal children and difficult backgrounds are not only inappropriate, but potentially damaging to a child's self-esteem." Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows rose with obvious skepticism. "Mr. Henderson, I've been teaching for 35 years. I think I know how to assess a child's capabilities. Emma is significantly behind grade level in reading and mathematics. She struggles with concentration and has difficulty following multi-step instructions. She's 6 years old and has experienced more trauma than most adults," Richard replied, his voice gaining an edge that made grown business executives reconsider their positions. "She lost her grandmother, spent 3 years in institutional care, and is now adjusting to an entirely new life. Of course she's struggling with concentration, which is exactly why I'm suggesting she might be better suited to the special education track," Mrs. Peterson continued, shuffling through papers with bureaucratic efficiency. "We have wonderful programs for children with learning disabilities and emotional disturbances." The words emotional disturbances hit Richard like a physical blow. "Are you suggesting my daughter is emotionally disturbed?" "I'm suggesting that children from orphanages often carry baggage that affects their ability to learn at the same pace as children from stable homes," Mrs. Peterson replied coolly. "It's not their fault, of course, but we must be realistic about their limitation." Richard stood slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across the teacher's desk. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to getting results. "Mrs. Peterson, let me be very clear about something. Emma is not limited by her past. She's strengthened by it. She has survived loss that would break many adults and maintained hope in circumstances that would crush most spirits." Mrs. Peterson shifted uncomfortably in her chair as Richard continued. "She will receive whatever tutoring and support she needs to succeed academically, but she will not be labeled, marginalized, or made to feel less than her peers because of prejudices about her background." "Mr. Henderson, I don't think you understand the challenges." "I understand them perfectly," Richard interrupted, his voice sharp as winter air. "I was Emma 25 years ago. I was the orphan kid that teachers wrote off as damaged goods. The difference is Emma has something I didn't have, a father who will fight for her every single day." He leaned forward, placing his hands on the desk. "Emma will remain in regular classes. You will adjust your teaching methods to accommodate her learning style. And if I hear that you've made any more comments about normal children versus children from difficult backgrounds, I will have you transferred to a school where your outdated attitudes might be less harmful." Mrs. Peterson's face flushed red. "You can't threaten me, Mr. Henderson. I have tenure and—" "I'm not threatening you," Richard said quietly. "I'm promising you, Emma Henderson is my daughter, and I will protect her from anyone who tries to diminish her light, including teachers who mistake ignorance for experience." He straightened his suit jacket and moved toward the door. "I'll be arranging for private tutoring to help Emma catch up academically, but her self-worth is non-negotiable. Good day, Mrs. Peterson." As Richard walked through the school corridors, he felt the familiar fire of protective rage burning in his chest. But this time, it wasn't destructive anger. It was the fierce love of a father who would tear down any obstacle that stood between his daughter and her dreams. Emma was waiting for him in the car, her face anxious with worry. "How did it go, Daddy?" Richard smiled and buckled his seatbelt. "It went perfectly, sweetheart. Mrs. Peterson and I understand each other now." But privately, Richard knew this battle was far from over. The world would test Emma's worth again and again, and he would be ready every single time. The reading tutor Richard hired was everything Mrs. Peterson was not. Young, enthusiastic, and blessed with the gift of seeing potential rather than deficits. Dr. Amanda Chen had specialized in working with children who'd experienced educational gaps, and her warm smile immediately put Emma at ease during their first session in the Henderson apartment. "So, Emma," Dr. Chen said, settling cross-legged on the living room floor with a stack of colorful books, "your dad tells me you love stories. What's your favorite kind?" Emma curled up in her favorite spot on the couch, clutching her grandmother's silver coin for comfort. "I like stories about brave kids who save the day, even when grown-ups think they're too little to help." Dr. Chen's eyes sparkled with understanding. "Ah, a fellow believer in mighty small heroes. I have just the book for you." She pulled out a slim volume with an illustration of a tiny girl facing down a dragon. This is about a 6-year-old named Lucy who discovers that sometimes the smallest people have the biggest hearts. Over the next hour, Dr. Chen worked magic that Mrs. Peterson had declared impossible. She didn't focus on Emma's deficits, but built on her strengths, her incredible memory for details, her emotional intelligence, and her vivid imagination. Instead of drilling sight words in isolation, she helped Emma connect letters to the stories that already lived in her heart. "You know what, Emma?" Dr. Chen said, as they finished the session. "Your brain works differently than some kids, and that's actually a superpower. You see connections that other people miss. You understand feelings that most adults struggle with. We just need to teach reading and math in the way your brilliant brain learns best." Richard watched from the kitchen doorway, marveling at how his daughter blossomed under positive attention. This was the Emma he knew, curious, eager to learn, bubbling with questions and insights that amazed him daily. Dr. Chen, Emma said thoughtfully. Do you think Mrs. Peterson is mean because she's scared, like Daddy used to be? Doctor. Chen glanced at Richard with raised eyebrows. What do you think makes people scared, sweetheart? Maybe she's scared that if kids like me can learn just as good as other kids, then she was wrong about a lot of things. And being wrong is scary when you're supposed to be the teacher. The wisdom in those words struck both adults speechless. Doctor. Chen recovered first, her voice filled with admiration. Emma, that might be the most insightful thing I've heard all week. You have what we call emotional intelligence, the ability to understand why people feel and act the way they do. Is that good? Emma asked. It's extraordinary, Dr. Chen assured her. It's one of the most important kinds of smart there is. After Dr. Chen left, Emma snuggled against Richard on the couch, her head on his shoulder. Daddy, I think I'm going to like learning with Dr. Chen. She makes me feel smart instead of stupid. Richard pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his heart swelling with pride and renewed determination. You are smart, baby girl. Incredibly, amazingly smart. Some people just don't know how to see it yet. But you see it, right, Daddy? I see it, Richard confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. I see your brilliant mind, your beautiful heart, and your brave spirit, and I promise you, Emma, that I will spend every day helping you see those things in yourself, too. Emma held up her silver coin, watching it catch the afternoon light. I think Grandma's magic is still working, Daddy. She sent you to be my daddy, and now she sent Dr. Chen to help me learn. I bet there are more good surprises coming. Richard smiled, though privately he wondered what challenges still lay ahead. But watching Emma's confidence slowly rebuild, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Their family was stronger than any obstacle the world could throw at them. The real test, however, was about to arrive in a form neither of them expected. The knock on their apartment door came on a cold Tuesday evening in November, just as Richard and Emma were settling down to read together before bedtime. Emma was curled up in her pajamas, finally making real progress with the chapter book, when the unexpected visitor interrupted their peaceful routine. Richard opened the door to find a woman in her 30s, with Emma's exact same brown eyes and dark hair, standing nervously in the hallway, with a manila envelope clutched in her trembling hands. "Are you Richard Henderson?" she asked, her voice shaky with emotion. "I'm Claire Morrison, I think. I think you have my daughter." The world seemed to tilt sideways as Richard stared at the woman who could only be one person. Emma's birth mother, the family member the social workers had never been able to locate. Behind him, he heard Emma's soft gasp as she recognized something familiar in the stranger's features. "I don't understand," Richard managed, though his heart was already sinking with a dread he'd never experienced. "Emma's mother died when she was 3. She's been legally available for adoption." Claire shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, that was my mother, Emma's grandmother. I'm her biological mother. I gave her to my mother to raise when I was only 16 and couldn't care for her. When Mom died, I was serving overseas in the military. By the time I got back and found out what happened, Emma had already been placed for adoption." Richard felt the floor beneath his feet become uncertain as the implications hit him like a physical blow. "You're saying you're Emma's biological mother?" "I have documentation," Claire said, holding out the envelope with shaking hands. "Birth certificate, DNA test results, military service records explaining my absence. I never legally relinquished my parental rights. My mother was Emma's legal guardian, but I'm still her mother." From behind, Richard came a small, confused voice that broke his heart into pieces. "Daddy, who is that lady? Why does she look like me?" Richard turned to see Emma standing in the living room doorway, her silver coin clutched tightly in her small fist, her face a mixture of curiosity and growing fear as she sensed the tension in the room. Claire's breath caught audibly when she saw Emma. "Oh my God, she's so beautiful. She looks just like... Emma? Baby, do you remember me at all?" Emma pressed closer to Richard's side, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you my real mommy, the one who went away?" The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Claire knelt down to Emma's level, her face wet with tears. Yes, sweetheart. I'm your mommy. I've been looking for you for 3 years. I never wanted to leave you with Grandma forever. I just needed to grow up and learn how to take care of you properly. Emma looked up at Richard with eyes full of confusion and fear. But Daddy, you said I was yours forever and always. You said nobody could take me away. Richard's throat felt like it was closing as he struggled to find words that could make sense of a situation that defied all logic and fairness. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that the family she'd finally found might be taken away by the very thing she'd always dreamed of, a biological parent who wanted her? Emma, he said carefully, kneeling down beside Claire, this is very complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes adults have to figure out hard things that don't have easy answers. Claire reached out tentatively toward Emma. I know this is confusing, baby, but I'm here now, and I want to take you home with me. I have a house in California with a backyard and a swing set. I've been preparing for you to come home for months. Emma clutched her coin tighter, stepping back against Richard's legs. But this is my home. Daddy is my family. I don't want to go to California. The raw pain in Emma's voice sent rage coursing through Richard's veins, but he forced himself to remain calm. Claire, I understand this is emotional for you, but Emma has been legally adopted. Our family is established and recognized by the courts. I've already spoken with an attorney, Claire replied firmly. When biological parents were not properly notified of adoption proceedings, there are legal remedies available, especially when the parent is military and was serving overseas. Richard felt his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around him, but he kept his voice steady for Emma's sake. I think we need to discuss this privately without Emma present. But Emma stepped forward suddenly, her small voice carrying surprising strength. Wait, I want to say something. Both adults looked down at the 6-year-old who had become the center of a legal and emotional storm she never asked for. I have a question for both of you, Emma said with the solemn dignity that had first captured Richard's heart. If you really love me, what matters most? What you want, or what makes me happy? The custody hearing took place in a sterile courtroom that felt nothing like the warm family spaces where Emma had learned to call Richard Daddy. Judge Patricia Williams, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes but a firm demeanor, reviewed the complex case file while Emma sat between Richard and Claire at the plaintiff's table, looking impossibly small in her best dress. This is an unusual case, Judge Williams began, her voice carrying the weight of Solomon-like wisdom that would determine Emma's future. We have a biological mother who was serving our country overseas and genuinely unaware of the adoption proceedings, and we have an adoptive father who has provided excellent care for 6 months. Richard's attorney, Patricia Wells, stood to present their case first. Your Honor, Emma Henderson has thrived in Mr. Henderson's care. She's receiving tutoring, therapy, and unlimited love. To remove her now would constitute another traumatic abandonment. Claire's attorney countered immediately. Your Honor, Ms. Morrison is Emma's biological mother who was denied due process. Military service should not result in permanent loss of parental rights. She has prepared extensively for Emma's return and can provide a stable, loving home. Judge Williams looked down at Emma, who sat quietly holding her grandmother's silver coin. Emma, I'd like to speak with you privately in my chambers. Sometimes children have thoughts that help us make the right decisions. 10 minutes later, Emma emerged from the judge's chambers with tear-stained cheeks, but a determined expression. Judge Williams followed, her face revealing nothing of their conversation. After speaking with Emma and reviewing all documentation, Judge Williams announced, I'm ordering a 6-month transition period. Emma will spend weekdays with Mr. Henderson and weekends with Ms. Morrison. This will allow her to build a relationship with her biological mother while maintaining stability with her adoptive father. Richard felt relief flood through him, but Claire's face crumpled with disappointment. Your Honor, I respectfully request reconsideration. I've been separated from my daughter for 3 years. Ms. Morrison, Judge Williams said firmly, Emma has expressed clear preferences based on attachment and stability. However, she also expressed curiosity about her biological family. This arrangement honors both her emotional needs and your parental rights. After court, Claire approached Richard in the hallway, her eyes red from crying. "I want you to know, I don't hate you. I can see how much Emma loves you. I missed so much of her life." Richard looked at this woman who had unknowingly shattered his world, seeing not an enemy, but another person who loved Emma desperately. "Claire, what if we focused on what's best for Emma instead of what's best for us?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe Emma doesn't have to choose between having a father and having a mother. Maybe she can have both, if we're mature enough to put her needs first." Claire studied his face carefully. "You'd be willing to share custody? Permanently?" "I'd be willing to be whatever Emma needs me to be," Richard replied. "If that means sharing her with you, then that's what we'll do. But I won't disappear from her life. She's my daughter too, legally, and in every way that matters." Emma had been listening to their conversation with the intensity of someone whose entire future hung in the balance. Suddenly, she stepped between them and held out her silver coin. "Grandma always said this coin would help me find my family," she said solemnly. "Maybe it wasn't supposed to find me just one person. Maybe it was supposed to find me all the people who could love me enough to share." She looked up at both adults with eyes wise beyond her years. "I want to try having a mommy and a daddy, but only if you promise never to make me choose between you. And only if you promise to be friends, because I can't love people who are mean to each other." Richard and Claire looked at each other over Emma's head, both recognizing the wisdom of a child who had learned that love multiplied rather than divided when shared freely. "I think," Claire said slowly, "that your grandma's coin worked exactly the way it was supposed to." Richard nodded, extending his hand to Claire. "Partners in loving Emma." Claire shook his hand, tears flowing freely. "Partners in loving Emma." Emma beamed and hugged them both simultaneously, her silver coin catching the courthouse lighting like a star. "Now I have the biggest family of all." 1 year later, the backyard of Claire's California home buzzed with the laughter of Emma's 7th birthday party, a celebration that perfectly captured the beautiful complexity their unconventional family had become. Richard had flown in from Chicago, as he did every other weekend, and Emma raced between her two parents with the natural ease of a child who had learned that love was not a limited resource. "Daddy, watch this!" Emma called out as she pumped her legs on the swing set Claire had installed. "Mommy taught me how to swing so high I can almost touch the clouds." Richard applauded enthusiastically while Claire smiled beside him, the initial awkwardness between them having evolved into genuine friendship built on their shared commitment to Emma's happiness. They had learned to coordinate school conferences, medical appointments, and bedtime stories across state lines with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. "She's reading at grade level now," Claire reported as they watched Emma play with her friends. Dr. Chen's methods really worked. Emma just needed someone to believe in her learning style. "Mrs. Peterson retired early," Richard added with satisfaction. "The new teacher, Miss Rodriguez, sees Emma's potential immediately. It's amazing what happens when educators focus on possibilities instead of problems." Dr. Amanda Chen, who had become not just Emma's tutor but a family friend, approached carrying a beautifully wrapped gift. "How's our favorite success story doing? Ready for 2nd grade next year?" "More than ready," Claire answered proudly. "She's writing her own stories now. Last week she wrote about a little girl whose magic coin brought her not one parent but 2, plus the best tutor in the world." Emma bounded over to them, her face flushed with excitement and chocolate frosting. "Dr. Chen, did you bring the special present we talked about?" Dr. Chen winked conspiratorially. "I certainly did. But first, there's something your parents want to give you." Richard and Claire exchanged meaningful glances before Richard knelt down to Emma's level, a small velvet box in his hands. "Emma, honey, this past year has taught us all something important about what family really means. It means that love grows bigger when you share it." Emma said solemnly, her brown eyes sparkling with understanding beyond her years. Exactly, Claire confirmed, kneeling beside Richard. So we wanted to give you something that shows how proud we are of the amazing little girl you've become, and how grateful we are that you taught us how to be a family. Richard opened the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a pendant that took Emma's breath away. A tiny replica of her grandmother's silver coin, but crafted in gleaming gold and engraved with words that made her eyes fill with happy tears. Emma Henderson Morrison, loved beyond measure. It's your new magic coin, Claire explained softly, because the old one worked so perfectly bringing us all together that we thought you might need a new one for all the adventures still ahead. Emma touched the pendant with reverent fingers before looking up at both her parents with a radiance that could have powered the sun. Do you know what I'm going to wish for with this one? What, sweetheart? Richard asked. That other kids who feel lonely and forgotten will find their families too. That there will be enough love in the world for everyone who needs it. Emma's voice grew stronger, more confident. And that grown-ups will remember that being different doesn't mean being broken. Dr. Chen wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Emma Henderson Morrison, you are going to change the world someday. Emma grinned and hugged both her parents simultaneously, her new necklace catching the California sunshine. I already did change the world. I changed Daddy's world and Mommy's world and my world. Sometimes that's how changing the whole world starts, one family at a time. As the party continued around them, Richard reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he had been a lonely, successful man who had forgotten how to love. Now he was part of something extraordinary, a family built not on conventional structures, but on the radical idea that love multiplied when shared freely. Emma's grandmother's silver coin sat in a place of honor in both their homes now. No longer a desperate wish, but a symbol of dreams fulfilled and miracles made manifest through the simple act of two adults choosing to put a child's needs above their own egos. And as Emma blew out her birthday candles, making a wish for all the lonely children in the world, both Richard and Claire knew that their daughter would indeed change the world. One heart at a time, one family at a time, one act of love at a time. The magic had always been real. It had just taken a 6-year-old girl with an old coin and a heart full of hope to show them where to find it.